What's up, guys? This is Timotheus. So, Netflix just released this new series on ancient Rome called Roman Empire Reign of Blood. And I just watched the first episode, so I thought I'd do a review.
Let me start off by saying a few things I like. First of all, the series tries to stay true to the historical events, and to emphasize this, they added documentary-like intermezzos where scholars give you some historical background. That's a pretty cool concept, I think. Then secondly, the narrator is Sean Bean. That's Ned Stark from Game of Thrones. Everything this man says just sounds epic. But
for the rest of the video, I'll be focusing mainly on the props, and I'm not really that happy about them. I have to say I was really excited to hear that there's a new series on ancient Rome available, but I'm kinda disappointed, to be honest. The first episode of Roman Empire Reign of Blood focuses on the Emperor Marcus Aurelius and his son Commodus. That's the same people you can see in the 2000 movie Gladiator, but that's 16 years ago, so it's become so much easier to access sources, to see Roman reliefs, frescoes, mosaics, and stuff like that I was really hoping for an improvement in authenticity. And the storyline seems to be more accurate, but the props, I don't know, I think they're, for the first episode at least, they're not better, or maybe even worse. And that's really a shame, because there have been movies and series since that were actually pretty accurate, like the movie Anagoria or the HBO series Rome. They were all pretty nice. So let me take you through a few points that I believe are missed opportunities, really, to take the series to a higher level and give it a higher educational value.
first, let me talk about the facial hair. While the early emperors obviously preferred a clean-shaven look, all the emperors from Hadrianus up until Caracalla were typically depicted with a beard. As far as I know, all busts of both Marcus Aurelius and Commodus as emperors show them as having beards, although busts made when they were still boys obviously have no beards. You could argue that showing Commodus without a beard at the beginning of the series makes sense because he's still young, but the previews show him without a beard even later on. And when it comes to Marcus Aurelius, for the life of me, I cannot think of a reason why he should be portrayed without his characteristic philosopher's beard, especially since this series was made now, when long beards have been fashionable again for a while, so it can be because they didn't want to alienate today's audience or something like that. Did they simply forget to do a Google image search for their names? Even the movie Gladiator showed Marcus Aurelius with a beard. Several women in the first episode, including the Empress Faustina, are shown with loose or semi-loose hair. But throughout the Roman era, loose hair was associated with death and mourning. It's obvious from busts of Faustina that she, like most Roman women at the time, wanted to look as refined as possible, and her neat hairstyle was one way to achieve that. The kind of hairdo you'd see on a girl who comes dressed as a Greek goddess to a Halloween party is something I wasn't surprised to see on the Spartacus series, but I was surprised to see it in Roman Empire Reign of Blood. Agora and HBO's Rome did a way better job when it comes to hairstyles. There is so much information available on ancient Roman women's hairstyles, even on YouTube. Why didn't they just check this? At one point, the narrator says that the soldiers were equipped with the latest weaponry. But what's pretty ironic is that at that exact moment, they're showing soldiers wearing Montefortino type helmets, which were typically used centuries before that, during the Republican era, but probably up until the early 1st century. This series, however, is supposed to depict the late 2nd century. Other helmets in the series kind of look like the helmets on Aurelius's column, or the typical Imperial Gallic helmets, so I can live with that. But if they had those lying around anyway, I really wonder what they were trying to do with the Montefortino helmets. Then, the preview at the beginning, where Commodus fights as a gladiator, does not only look silly because of the overly choreographed Tai Chi-like sword fighting, but also because of the fact that his equipment does not look like that of a gladiator at all. They're not even wearing helmets, and his scutum or shield has straps instead of a center grip. But for more details on that, I refer you to my video on the 7 most popular types of gladiators of Imperial Rome. Then, the wine cups. There are several types of wine cups you can see on Roman frescoes, reliefs, and mosaics, and they correspond to what has been excavated. Replicas of all these types are readily available online or at many museum shops, so I don't know why they didn't simply use some of those instead of the New Age chalices they used. When it comes to wine cups, they did a better job in the series I Claudius, and it's from the 1970s for crying out loud. Let's talk about the candles now. Although candles were used during the Roman period, oil lamps were much more common. In the series, I think I saw one Byzantine-style oil lamp for a brief moment, but there were dozens of candles, which feels kind of off. If they really wanted to use candles anyway, why didn't they put them in one of the typical kinds of Roman candlestick holders instead of these modern chandeliers, which look nothing like them? It's like the makers just sent a few people to a random home decor shop and said, "Just bring whatever looks a bit old-fashioned, guys." Then, one last thing, the cuffs or bracelets. For some reason, modern filmmakers insist on depicting Roman men with a pair of cuffs, and I really wonder where this comes from. I've been paying attention to this for years, but I've never seen a contemporary depiction of a Roman soldier or emperor wearing any. Perhaps there actually is a depiction of a Roman man wearing this kind of bracelet out there, because even some characters on HBO's Rome wore them. If you happen to know where filmmakers got this idea, please let me know. But they can't have been that common, at least not in this era, because no one seems to be wearing any on neither the column nor the arch of Marcus Aurelius. This is an overview of the things I didn't like. If it had been just one or even two of these things, I would have gladly forgiven them, but the fact that they made so many mistakes gives a very sloppy impression. It makes me wonder if they even had a historical advisor.
A lot of the stuff I just mentioned may seem like details to a lot of you, and they are to a certain extent. But I'd expect something like this from a series like Spartacus, a series that tries to tell a story in a creative manner without necessarily feeling the need to portray certain things accurately. But this series is a bit different, I think. Since they're this semi-documentary, I feel like they should have avoided some of these mistakes. So I'm sure you'll still enjoy the storyline. I can't really tell you much about that since I've only seen the first episode. But these were just a few things that, if you're really interested in ancient Rome, maybe you should know while watching the series. Be sure to check out my channel. I have a few playlists that might interest you. For example, I have one on gladiators and one on pagan Roman deities and altars. Also, if you liked the video, please hit the like button. This was Timotheos. Thanks for watching.